The pristine white marble floors of Sheikh Khaled Al-Bakr's mansion stretched endlessly like frozen tears, reflecting the 1,000 crystal fragments of chandeliers that hung like frozen stars above. Each surface gleamed with surgical precision. Gold fixtures polished to mirror brightness, Persian rugs aligned with mathematical exactness, every corner scrubbed clean of the slightest imperfection. The air itself seemed sanitized, heavy with the scent of imported French roses and underlying disinfectant. Alicia Cruz moved through this palace of perfection with practiced silence, her cloth buffing away invisible fingerprints from doorknobs that cost more than her family's annual income. As she worked, her mind wandered to the letter hidden beneath her mattress, the one that would change everything. Her niece's hopeful words echoed in her memory. "Tita Maria, when can I come to Dubai? I want to help Papa with his medicine." 3 months before what would become known as the wedding that shook the Emirates, Maria paused at a gilded mirror, seeing not her own reflection but the face of the girl she was about to summon. This house holds secrets behind every gleaming surface, she thought, watching shadows dance across marble that had witnessed too much silence. Halfway across the world, in a cramped Manila apartment where paint peeled like old skin and the ceiling fan wheezed with each rotation, Alicia Cruz sat cross-legged on her narrow bed, counting pesos with the desperate precision of someone for whom every coin mattered. 2,300 pesos, barely enough for her father's medication for 2 weeks. The medical bills lay scattered around her like fallen leaves, each one a reminder of how quickly hope could turn to debt. Her fingers traced the edges of her aunt's latest letter, the paper soft from repeated reading. "Dubai is a land of opportunities," Maria had written in her careful script. "The families here are generous to those who work hard." Between the lines, Alicia read what her aunt couldn't quite say. That money flowed here like water in the desert, and for someone young and willing, the possibilities were endless. "Maybe this is my chance to finally help Papa with his medical bills," she whispered to the photograph of her family taped above her bed. Her father's gentle smile looked back at her, unaware that his diabetes medication would soon become the chain that bound his daughter to a fate she couldn't imagine. At 22, Alicia possessed the dangerous combination of beauty, innocence, and an unshakable faith that love and sacrifice could solve any problem. 10 years of exile in Dubai's golden cage had taught Alicia Cruz to read the shadows between wealth and brutality. As she dusted the Sheikh's private study, her eyes unconsciously tracked the way he dismissed his second wife with a gesture, the woman's head bowing in practiced submission before she retreated like a ghost. Maria had learned to make herself invisible in this house, to move between the cracks of power without drawing attention to her Filipino features or accented English. Sheikh Khaled Al-Bakr commanded his domain from behind a desk carved from a single piece of ebony, his presence filling the room like incense, overwhelming and inescapable. At 40, he possessed the lean elegance of a man who had never known want, his movements precise and calculated as a chess master contemplating his next victory. When he spoke, servants appeared instantly. When he frowned, entire households held their breath. "The flowers in the East Garden displease me," he told his second wife during their morning inspection, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Replace them, all of them." The woman nodded quickly, her expensive jewelry catching the light as her hands trembled slightly. Maria watched from the shadows, noting how the Sheikh's eyes followed his wife's retreat with the cold satisfaction of a predator who had successfully established dominance. It was during these observations that Maria made her fatal mistake. She began speaking of home, of family, of a young niece whose photograph she carried in her uniform pocket. The Sheikh's interest sharpened when she mentioned Alicia's age, her education, her beauty. "She sounds like a remarkable young woman," he said, his tone deceptively casual. "Perhaps she might benefit from opportunities here in Dubai." The phone call came on a Thursday evening, when Alicia's father had just returned from another feudal doctor's visit with news that his condition was worsening. Maria's voice crackled through the cheap phone connection, bright with forced enthusiasm that couldn't quite mask her growing unease. "Alicia, my darling, I have wonderful news," Maria began, her words carefully chosen, each syllable a step further into a trap she was only beginning to understand. "There's a family here, very wealthy, very respectable. Who could use someone with your intelligence and grace. In the Al-Bakr family's private sitting room, Nawal al-Bakr held court like an empress, her silver hair immaculately styled despite the late hour. At 55, she had perfected the art of wielding influence through silence and strategic intervention. A woman's worth is measured by what she preserves. Nawal instructed her daughter-in-law during their evening tea, her voice carrying the authority of generations. Purity is not merely a physical state. It is a reflection of character, of family honor. When the Emirates flight descended through Dubai's glittering skyline, Alicia pressed her face to the small window, watching impossible towers pierce the desert sky. At the airport, Maria waited with a nervous smile, feeling guilt stab through her chest as her niece ran into her arms with tears of hope and reunion. The drive to the Al-Bakr mansion revealed Dubai's arteries of wealth, and when they finally arrived, Alicia stepped into a world that made even the airport's opulence seem modest. The mansion rose before her like something from a fairy tale, all white stone and graceful arches, fountains catching light like liquid diamonds. "It's beautiful," she whispered, not noticing how Maria's smile faltered, how her aunt's eyes darted nervously toward windows where shadows moved behind curtains of silk and gold. The Sheikh's private study resembled a temple to acquisition, walls lined with first-edition books he'd never read, artifacts from civilizations he'd helped exploit, and photographs of himself with world leaders who tolerated his presence for oil money. Maria stood before his mahogany desk, her hands unconsciously polishing the golden bars of an ornate birdcage, while he spoke of her niece's potential. "Your Alicia is exactly what this family needs," Sheikh Khaled said. His fingers steepled as he studied Maria's face for signs of resistance. Young, educated, unspoiled by Western corruption. "I would be honored to offer her a position of great responsibility." His paws hung in the air like incense, heavy with unspoken implications. Maria's cloth moved in circular motions across the cage's intricate metalwork, each stroke revealing her internal struggle. The Sheikh's offer was generous beyond her wildest dreams. Enough money to buy her sister's family a house, to pay for her nephew's university education, to secure their future for generations. Yet something in his tone made her stomach clench with foreboding. "She's just a girl, sir," Maria whispered, her voice barely audible above the ticking of an antique clock. "She dreams of helping people, of becoming a nurse, and she shall help people," the Sheikh replied smoothly, rising from his chair to tower over her. "She'll help this family maintain its honor, its traditions. What greater calling could there be?" His words carried the weight of scripture, delivered with the confidence of a man who had never been denied anything he truly wanted. Maria's mind raced through calculations, her sister's mounting debts, her father's failing health, the remittances that kept her extended family from starvation. Against this arithmetic of desperation, her protective instincts felt selfish, almost cruel. "What exactly would her duties involve?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "She would become my third wife," the Sheikh said simply, watching Maria's face crumble and rebuild itself in the space of a heartbeat. "A position of tremendous honor in our culture. She would want for nothing, and neither would your family." The next 3 weeks unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance of deception. Alicia moved through the mansion's corridors with growing confusion, her initial excitement gradually replaced by a creeping sense of unease. The household staff spoke to her in whispers, their eyes holding secrets she couldn't decipher. When she asked about her work duties, responses were vague, deflected with promises that all would be explained in time. Sheikh Khaled appeared at breakfast each morning, his attention focused on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. He would ask about her education, her family, her dreams, nodding thoughtfully at her answers, while his eyes traced her movements with proprietary interest. "You have such grace," he would say, his compliments feeling more like appraisals than praise. "Such natural elegance. My mother is eager to teach you our customs." Nawal al-Bakr's lessons began subtly, woven into afternoon tea sessions that felt more like interrogations. "In our culture, a woman's value lies in her ability to honor her family's name," the older woman would say, her silver jewelry catching the light as she demonstrated proper posture, proper speech, proper submission. Obedience is not weakness. It is strength channeled in service of something greater than oneself. Alicia's phone calls home became increasingly monitored, with household staff always nearby, listening with pleasant smiles that never reached their eyes. Her internet access was gradually restricted under the guise of focusing on cultural immersion. When she protested, Maria would squeeze her hand gently and whisper, "Trust me, my darling. Everything I do is for your future." The truth emerged in fragments, like sunlight filtering through prison bars. During a family dinner where Alicia was displayed like a prized acquisition, the Sheikh's casual mention of wedding preparations hit her like a physical blow. "Wedding?" she stammered, her fork clattering against fine china. "I don't understand." "Our union will be a celebration of two cultures coming together," the Sheikh explained, his tone suggesting the matter had been decided long ago. "Your aunt has given her blessing, and my family is honored to welcome you." Alicia's eyes found Maria across the table, seeing guilt and apology in her aunt's face, but also desperation so profound it bordered on panic. That night, alone in her luxurious prison of silk sheets and golden fixtures, Alicia's mind drifted to Miguel Reyes, the engineering student whose gentle hands had traced her face in stolen moments behind Manila's university library. She remembered their whispered plans for a simple wedding, their dreams of a small apartment where they would build a life together brick by brick, peso by peso. His simple silver ring, bought with 3 months of saved allowance, had meant more to her than all the Sheikh's gold combined. "I'll wait for you," Miguel had promised when she left for Dubai, pressing that ring into her palm. "However long it takes, I'll wait." She had kissed him then with the passion of youth and the desperation of goodbye, giving him her body and soul in a moment that would later seal her fate. Now, that sacred memory felt like evidence in a trial where she was both defendant and victim. The wedding preparations began with the efficiency of a military campaign. Traditional Emirati seamstresses arrived with measuring tapes and fabric samples, while nutritionists prescribed diets to enhance her natural beauty. Skin lightening treatments were presented as routine self-care, while etiquette coaches instructed her in the art of pleasing a powerful man. Each day, Alicia felt herself disappearing, replaced by a perfect doll designed to satisfy the Sheikh's vision of an ideal wife. The white wedding dress, when it finally arrived, looked less like a gown than a shroud, heavy with pearls and gold thread, designed to transform her into a symbol rather than a person. As Nawal fastened the countless buttons, Alicia caught glimpses of the household staff in the mirrors, their faces reflecting a mixture of pity and relief that they were not in her position. The servants' whispered conversations carried fragments of terrible knowledge, mentions of previous wives who had returned home suddenly, discussions that stopped abruptly when she entered rooms, warning glances exchanged when the Sheikh's temper flared over minor imperfections. The beautiful mansion revealed itself as an elegant trap, its golden bars as unbreakable as any prison's steel. The Burj Al Arab transformed into a fever dream of Arabian opulence, its sail-shaped silhouette piercing Dubai's skyline like a golden dagger against the sunset. Inside the grand ballroom, 10,000 white roses cascaded from crystal chandeliers, while fountains of traditional Arabic tea flowed beside towers of dates stuffed with gold leaf. Traditional oud music blended with Filipino folk songs, creating a soundtrack for cultural collision as elaborate as it was hollow. Alicia sat rigidly in her wedding throne, a masterpiece of carved ivory and mother-of-pearl that felt more like an electric chair. Her dress, weighing nearly 20 kilograms with its intricate gold embroidery and pearl-encrusted train, made every breath a struggle. The heavy necklace at her throat, emeralds the size of grapes set in chains of Dubai gold, pressed against her windpipe like a beautiful noose, each piece of jewelry another link in the gilded slavery that awaited her. Sheikh Khaled moved through the crowd with practiced grace, accepting congratulations from business partners and government officials who understood exactly what transaction they were witnessing. To the gathered elite, he appeared the picture of magnanimous generosity, a successful man sharing his wealth with a deserving young woman. Yet Alicia caught glimpses of his true nature in unguarded moments. The way his smile vanished when photographers weren't watching, how his hand gripped her wrist with bruising force during their ceremonial dance, the predatory calculation in his eyes as he surveyed his newest acquisition. "You look radiant, my dear," whispered one of his business associates, an oil executive whose own young wife stood silent beside him with dead eyes. "Such a fortunate girl." Alicia managed a trembling smile, her face aching from hours of forced expressions, while her mind screamed warnings that no one would hear. The ceremony concluded with traditional vows spoken in Arabic and English, words about honor and obedience that tasted like ashes in Alicia's mouth. As rice and rose petals rained down upon them, she felt each grain like a small stone in her burial. The royal suite's oppressive luxury suffocated like perfumed smoke, silk wallpaper in deep burgundy, furniture carved from extinct wood species, artwork worth more than entire villages. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Dubai's glittering sprawl, but to Alicia they felt like the walls of a beautiful aquarium where she was the trapped exotic fish. Sheikh Khaled poured traditional Arabic tea from an ornate silver service, his movements deliberate and ceremonial. "To honor and tradition," he said, offering her a delicate glass cup while his own remained untouched. The sweet mint tea burned her throat, but she dared not refuse, understanding instinctively that defiance would only accelerate whatever horrors awaited her. "Now," the sheikh said, his public mask finally falling away completely, "we must attend to certain requirements." His clinical tone made her skin crawl as he approached with the detached interest of a livestock inspector. "In my culture, a bride's purity is not merely expected. It is essential to family honor. You understand this, don't you?" Alicia's mind struggled to process his words even as her body trembled with fear. "I don't understand what you mean," she whispered, though part of her feared she understood perfectly. "A medical examination," he explained with surgical precision, producing a white cloth that looked ominously clinical, "to confirm what your aunt assured me about your intact state." His eyes held no warmth, no humanity, only the cold expectation of ownership verified through inspection. The humiliation of his examination cut deeper than any physical violence could have. Alicia closed her eyes and tried to transport her consciousness elsewhere, while he confirmed what she had desperately hoped he would never discover. When his hands stilled and his breathing changed, she knew with terrible certainty that her secret had been exposed. "You are not pure," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper more terrifying than any scream. "You have lied to me. Your family has lied to me. I paid for an untouched bride, and you have given me damaged goods." "Please," Alicia began, her words trembling with desperation. "I can explain. Explain." The sheikh's composure cracked like thin ice, revealing the molten rage beneath. "What explanation could possibly justify this deception? Do you understand what you have cost me? What you have made me in the eyes of my family, my community?" Terror gave her courage to speak truth. "I loved him," she said simply, thinking of Miguel's gentle hands and patient smile. "His name was Miguel, and we were going to be married before my father got sick. I loved him, but I chose my family over my heart. I chose to come here, to sacrifice my happiness for their survival." The confession hung in the air like incense in a cathedral, sacred, honest, and utterly damning. For a moment, the sheikh said nothing, his face cycling through emotions too complex and violent for any single expression to contain. Then his features settled into something Alicia had never seen before, the cold fury of a man whose pride had been publicly executed. "You dare speak of another man on our wedding night?" His voice carried the quiet before an avalanche. "You think your noble sacrifice excuses the defilement of what I purchased?" The first blow sent her crashing into an antique mirror, silver glass exploding around her like deadly confetti. Blood bloomed across the white silk of her wedding dress as she tried to crawl away, but there was nowhere to escape in the gilded prison of the royal suite. His hands found her throat with the precision of a man who had done this before, squeezing with methodical pressure while she clawed desperately at his wrists. "I paid for purity," he hissed through gritted teeth, his weight pinning her against the marble floor. "I paid for honor, for reputation, for the privilege of being first. Instead, You have made me a fool, a cuckold, a laughingstock. As darkness closed around her vision, Alicia's final thoughts were not of her own pain but of Miguel's promise to wait for her, of her father's gentle smile, of dreams that would die with her in this palace of gold and horror. The white sheets of the marriage bed turned crimson, transforming from symbols of purity to evidence of a murder born from obsession with an impossible ideal. When Sheikh Khaled finally released his grip, the sudden silence in the room felt apocalyptic. The end of a world where a young woman's hopes had briefly existed before being crushed beneath the weight of tradition, wealth, and masculine pride run mad with power. The Sheikh stared at Alicia's lifeless form for 17 minutes before his mind shifted from murderer to strategist. His hands, still trembling from violence, reached for his phone with the mechanical precision of a man accustomed to solving problems through wealth and influence. The transition from rage to calculation happened as smoothly as flipping a switch, one moment consumed by fury over his tarnished honor, the next focused entirely on preserving the reputation that murder had just shattered. Within 30 minutes, Nawal al-Bakr arrived at the royal suite with the efficiency of a general deploying to battle. At 55, she had spent decades protecting her family's name from scandals both large and small, but nothing had prepared her for the sight of her son standing over a dead bride in a wedding dress stained crimson with violence. "What have you done?" she whispered, though her tone carried disappointment rather than horror, the voice of a woman more concerned with consequences than conscience. "She was impure," Khaled replied flatly, as if this explained everything. "She deceived us, made fools of us before God and society." Nawal's mind immediately began calculating damage control. "Heart attack," she said after studying the scene with clinical detachment. Young bride, overwhelmed by the excitement of the wedding, the stress of leaving her family. These Filipino girls have weak constitutions. Everyone knows this. Her words carried the casual racism of someone who had never seen foreign workers as fully human. They worked with the practiced efficiency of undertakers, cleaning blood from marble floors while discussing alibis. Hotel staff were contacted with carefully crafted stories about the bride's sudden illness, while family physicians were summoned to provide convenient diagnoses. The beautiful suite transformed into a crime scene being methodically erased, every surface wiped clean of truth while maintaining its facade of luxury. Maria's scream shattered the morning silence like glass breaking in a cathedral. She had come to bring Alicia breakfast, traditional Filipino rice porridge to comfort a homesick bride, only to find her niece's body arranged in the marriage bed like a broken doll. The silver tray crashed to the floor, sending porcelain fragments across marble as Maria fell to her knees beside the girl she had delivered to death. "Alicia, wake up," she whispered, shaking shoulders that would never move again. "Please, my darling, please wake up." But even as she spoke, Maria's hands found the bruises on Alicia's throat, the fingerprint-shaped evidence of deliberate violence that no heart attack could explain. The hotel manager arrived first, followed by family physicians who examined the body with suspicious speed and declared natural causes with unseemly certainty. Maria watched this theater of deception unfold, her grief transforming into a cold recognition of her own complicity. She had delivered her innocent niece to monsters wearing the masks of respectability, and now those same monsters were erasing all evidence of their crime. "Tragic," murmured the family doctor, a man whose Swiss bank accounts ensured his discretionary blindness. Young women from developing countries often have undiagnosed heart conditions. The excitement of such a grand wedding, the stress of cultural adaptation, it's more common than people realize. Detective Hannah Rashid had built her career on reading the lies that wealth could buy. At 35, she navigated Dubai's male-dominated police force with the careful precision of someone who understood that one mistake could end not just her case, but her career. Her hijab was perfectly arranged, her manner respectfully professional, but her dark eyes missed nothing as she surveyed the scene that reeked of cover-up beneath its veneer of tragedy. "The body hasn't been moved?" she asked the hotel manager, noting the pristine arrangement that looked more like staging than death. "Of course not," he replied too quickly. "We immediately called the family physician, who confirmed the natural causes." Hannah's trained gaze caught details others had missed: the replaced coffee table, The fresh vacuum marks on Persian rugs, the faint discoloration on marble where bleach had been hastily applied. Most telling were the family's reactions. The Sheikh's controlled composure, Nawal's theatrical grief that never reached her calculating eyes, and Maria's raw horror that spoke of genuine shock and growing realization. This case felt personal to Hannah in ways she couldn't fully articulate. Her own sister had married young to escape poverty, disappearing into a household where questions weren't welcome and bruises were explained away as clumsiness. When her sister's body was found floating in a swimming pool, the official cause was accidental drowning, a verdict that satisfied everyone except the detective who had learned to recognize violence disguised as misfortune. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Hidden beneath Alicia's mattress, wrapped in a plastic bag and tucked inside a Spanish-English dictionary, lay a letter addressed to Miguel Reyes in Manila. Written in a mixture of Tagalog and Spanish, the pages revealed a young woman's growing terror as she realized the true nature of her situation. "I am afraid," Alicia had written in careful script. "The Sheikh looks at me like I am property he has purchased, not a person he wishes to marry. The other wives move through this house like ghosts, and the servants whisper warnings they think I cannot understand. If something happens to me, know that I loved you always, and that my families need forced this choice upon me." The letter detailed specific incidents, the Sheikh's violent outbursts over minor infractions, his obsession with controlling every aspect of his wife's behavior, and most damning, his explicit demands for proof of virginity that had filled Alicia with dread. Each page painted a picture of escalating psychological abuse that made her death feel inevitable rather than sudden. When Maria was finally questioned away from the family's watchful presence, her composure crumbled like a dam bursting. "I thought I was saving her," she sobbed, her hands shaking as she signed her statement. "The money they offered, it was enough to change our family's entire future. I convinced myself that wealthy men treat their wives like queens, that she would be grateful once she saw the luxury awaiting her." Her testimony revealed the calculated nature of Alicia's recruitment, the way financial desperation had been weaponized against a loving family, and the systematic isolation that had prevented the young woman from seeking help even when she recognized her danger. The evidence mounted like storm clouds gathering, medical inconsistencies, witness testimonies, financial records showing payments to silence potential whistleblowers. Yet for every piece of truth Hannah uncovered, political pressure mounted to close the case quietly, to accept the convenient fiction that preserved Dubai's reputation as a safe haven for international marriage and business. The Dubai police interrogation room stood in stark contrast to every space Sheikh Khaled Al-Bakr had ever occupied. Fluorescent lights instead of crystal chandeliers, plastic chairs rather than hand-carved thrones, walls of institutional beige that refused to reflect his wealth back at him. For the first time in his 40 years, he sat without the armor of luxury, reduced to what he truly was. A man who had murdered his bride for failing to meet his impossible standards. Detective Hannah Rashid arranged her evidence files with surgical precision, each document a nail in the coffin of his carefully constructed alibi. "Let's discuss the timeline," she began, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had built her career on patient, methodical truth-telling. "Your bride died sometime between midnight and 2 a.m. The hotel's security cameras show no one entering or leaving your suite during that period except you." The Sheikh's composure, legendary in boardrooms and government meetings, began to crack like ice under spring sun. "This is harassment," he said, though his voice lacked its usual commanding tone. "My family has served this country for generations. My business relationships—" "Your business relationships don't explain the bruising pattern on Alicia's throat," Hannah interrupted, sliding forensic photographs across the metal table. "Manual strangulation requires sustained pressure for several minutes. This wasn't a moment of passion. It was deliberate, methodical murder." As the evidence mounted, the blood traces that bleach couldn't completely erase, the hotel staff testimonies about suspicious cleaning activities, Alicia's hidden letter detailing her growing fear, the Sheikh's mask finally shattered completely. "She lied to me," he snarled, his carefully modulated voice rising to something approaching a shriek. "She came to my bed corrupted, defiled by another man's touch. Do you understand what that means? What it cost my family's honor? "It means you killed a 22-year-old girl for having lived before she met you," Hannah replied evenly. "It means you valued your pride more than her life." The Sheikh's response revealed the depth of his delusion. She was nothing, a purchase that failed to meet specifications. I had every right to demand satisfaction for the deception. The trial of Sheikh Khaled Al-Bakr became a media sensation that exposed the dark underbelly of Dubai's glittering facade. International news crews lined the courthouse steps while social media exploded with hashtags demanding justice for Alicia. The modern courthouse, with its soaring glass walls and marble columns, became a battleground between old power and new accountability. Maria's testimony broke the carefully maintained silence that had protected the Al-Bakr family for decades. "I delivered my niece to her death," she sobbed from the witness stand, her words carrying across a courtroom packed with Filipino workers, women's rights activists, and international observers. "I saw the signs, the other wives who never smiled, the servants who spoke in whispers, the way he looked at her like she was property. But the money, I thought the money would save us all." When Alicia's letter was read aloud, her voice seemed to fill the courtroom from beyond the grave. "If something happens to me, know that I chose love over fear, family over self-preservation. I pray that my sacrifice will mean something, that other girls will be protected from the choices that destroyed me." The gallery erupted in sobs and angry shouts that the judge's gavel could barely control. The Sheikh's defense, that he had acted within his cultural rights to punish deception, fell apart when international law experts testified about universal human rights that transcended local customs. His attempts to claim temporary insanity were undermined by evidence of premeditation and his cold, calculated cleanup efforts. Nawal al-Bakr's arrest for conspiracy and accessory to murder sent shockwaves through Dubai's elite circles. The matriarch who had controlled her family's empire through manipulation and strategic silence found herself stripped of power and privilege, her mansion seized as evidence of money laundering and human trafficking operations that had funded her lifestyle for decades. "I protected our family's honor," she declared defiantly as police led her away in handcuffs. "Everything I did was to preserve traditions that built this nation." But her words rang hollow in a courtroom where her family's victims had finally found their voices. The photographs being removed from the Al-Bakr mansion walls told the story of a dynasty's collapse. Images of the family with world leaders, charity galas, and business celebrations all tainted now by the knowledge of what that wealth had truly cost. Maria's transformation from complicit participant to passionate advocate marked her journey toward redemption. She testified at legislative hearings, spoke at women's shelters, and became a bridge between Dubai's Filipino community and Emirati human rights organizations. "My silence enabled this tragedy," she told a packed auditorium at the Dubai Women's Foundation. "But Alicia's voice will live through every woman we save from similar fates." Her work led to the Alicia Cruz Protection Act, requiring independent interviews for all international marriage arrangements, mandatory waiting periods, and severe penalties for coercive practices. What began as one family's tragedy became a catalyst for systemic change that protected thousands of vulnerable women. The ripple effects spread far beyond Dubai's borders. International human rights organizations launched investigations into forced marriage practices throughout the Gulf region, while social media campaigns brought global attention to the intersection of poverty, gender violence, and cultural tradition. Protests outside UAE embassies worldwide demanded accountability and reform. "Some prices are too high for any tradition," she said to the rising sun, knowing that progress would always require challenging power, and that justice was worth whatever it cost those brave enough to pursue it.